It's rare that your family appreciates your knits, so I'm just gonna let this one slide. All I have to do is just make another one. Notice that every other row of the chart is an exact repetition of the previous row, which makes the knitting a lot easier. The color work continues on the body, and that's why we have two fake seams here at the side. Hello, my name is Zanete. I am the designer behind Zanete Knits, and welcome to another one of my pattern deep dives. This time it's on Martin's sweater, pattern that's coming out in a few days, and in this video I will talk to you about the inspiration, the yarn, a gauge, and needles I used, the sizing, the construction, and all the techniques that are involved here, as well as some possible customizations and modifications. This is a stranded Colourwork sweater inspired by my Latvian heritage. I'm using one of our power symbols of Martin's, the symbol of fire and light. In its original form, it looks something like this. It's derived from another power sign, but you can see here the legs are going downwards, pointing downwards towards the underground, and that's the only place where life exists in winter. It also signifies the power of things that have ended their life on the earth, and then they go underground and they need to go through that through like this gate to become something new. And as it's a folk sign, it goes through many iterations and people have added things to it, and it's still the essence the same. I did the same with mine. In fact, I had envisaged it to be slightly different. I rotated it, but due to some yarn amount constraints, I had to cut it short, so I ended up embellishing with a few extra lines here and there, and you could barely recognize, but I wanted to show you the history of where all of this came from. There's another story related to this. I also rediscovered this sign in a little handmade cover book handed to me by my grandmother. She saved this book from destruction in the Soviet times. She worked at the library, and at that time the Soviets would do anything to extinguish or destroy anything that would celebrate the individual identity of the Soviet countries. So because this contained a lot of Latvian signs and symbols, she tore off the cover and hid it, and then later on redid the cover. And in doing so, she risked not only her job, but also her freedom at that time. So it's a very precious book for me and everything that's in it. And I'm very proud that they managed to keep things safe, and I can be inspired by that and carry it on in new interpretations in contemporary designs. And talking a little bit more about yarn, so this design was made in collaboration with Camellia Fibers. I was at their booth at Vogue Knitting Live and touching a swatch of this Suri lace for the first time. It was instant love, and I am so grateful and happy that she considered collaborating with me and generously provided yarn for this project. It is literally the softest and lightest thing that I own. It might not seem very natural to pick this kind of yarn for a stranded Colourwork project, but let me tell you, I do not regret a thing. I wouldn't change a thing. It was an experiment that turned out to be super successful. This is one of my favorite things that I've made. But my daughter claimed it, and it's rare that your family appreciates your knits, so I'm just gonna let this one slide. All I have to do is just make another one. Even though the yarn says it's lace weight, the gauge is nothing like lace. It's actually 24 stitches times 32 rows in a 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. And that's closer to DK, so you get very nice and light fabric in that gauge, and it fills up so beautifully. I had to use 2.75 millimeter, and that is US size 2 needle to get that gauge, but I'm quite a loose knitter, so don't be put off by the needle size either. It's likely that you might need to go up. And even if you don't, still the gauge is quite loose, so it's relatively quick knit when compared to other lace weight or even fingering weight projects. It comes in 9 sizes, and the recommended ease is 10 to 15 centimeters. That is 4 to 6 inches. And the smallest size ends up being 90 centimeters around the bust, and that is 36 inches, with the largest one being 170 centimeters and that is 68 inches. The construction is a modified raglan. I personally don't feel quite so comfortable in a typical raglan. I feel like my shoulders are perhaps a bit too wide, and I feel that it's stretching here and then there's too much fabric here. So what I've attempted to do here is to increase the body as rapidly as possible to the full width here and then continue straight. So it's not traditional raglan in that sense. And also the sleeve increase cadence changes from place to place depending on your size. You start by casting on stitches here at the base of the neck. Well, actually, it will be just to here because we increase all of these fronts. We start working flat back and forth until we are ready to join the 2 fronts with some increases here to shape the front neckline, as well as, of course, the raglan increases. And then we join the 2 fronts, and from that point we work in the round, and that's where we also introduce the second color and start following the Colourwork chart. There are 8 charts. 4 of them are longer charts, so that's the body chart, and 4 of them are sleeve charts, so there's a bit cut off here, and that's all to do with my yarn amount concerns. I had initially picked this, you can see the main color is actually 2 shades. One is called New York and this is called Silver Juniper, and the contrast color is called Midnight. I had thought that I will use this Silver Juniper as a second contrast color to add some liveliness in the sweater, but when I joined it and started working, I realized that it's completely invisible. It doesn't stand out at all, and all my hard stranded color work effort is wasted, so I had to undo that and just stick with one color. But because of that, I did not have enough of the contrast color with me at the time to make the full length. There was supposed to be another leg like that to be completely symmetrical from this point. So I had to cut that off. And when I got to the sleeves, I realized I will not have enough for both sleeves. So that's the only reason why there are 2 charts. But that's offering you a lot of different options. You could use the sleeve chart on the body. That only becomes a decision you need to make after you've separated the sleeves, because they are different from around here. If you have lots of yarn, you could use the long chart also on the sleeves, so the sleeve color work would end up at the same space where the body color work is. And the reason for there being 4 of each versions is that there is one on a light background and one on the dark background. So inverted, in case you want a moodier sweater, you can choose the darker background with light CC. And the other option that you have is, because some of these floats are quite long, I'm again using my favorite ladder back jacquard method for catching long floats. And so there are a couple of charts with dark background and light background that also offer you suggested ladder back jacquard placements. And fun fact is, you'll probably quickly notice that every other row of the chart is an exact repetition of the previous row, which makes the knitting a lot easier. You don't have to always study the chart after every round. You can just be in the flow for, you learn the repeat, and then you're in the flow for 2 rounds. The way the color work works here is you start at the beginning of round and you use the same chart for all sizes and for the body sections and the sleeve sections. All that changes is the beginning, the starting stitch of that chart. So, and as you increase stitches here for the sleeves and the body, that starting stitch will be shifting. So that's one of the focusing areas you need to pay attention to. so you don't get lost, but hopefully you are able to print the charts and mark with a pencil where those shifts happen for your size. The pattern will have the specific instructions for all of that. And the raglan lines are always worked in main color to provide a break between the sections. No section fits a full repeat, so there has to be a break, like as if you would take a piece of printed fabric and cut it in pieces before seaming it up back together. And it goes without saying that I recommend quite high contrast between the main color and the contrast color, so you don't run into the problem that I had and had to find workarounds. I was also running out of the main color, so I needed to find a way to use the only skein that was left. The other previously contrast color became another shade of main color, so you'll see there's a little stranded section here to get you to the other color, and the same happens at the hem. If you have enough yarn for 2 sweaters, you might also consider just knitting plain sleeves and plain body without having to introduce a 3rd color for a more minimalistic look. Once we have completed all the increases and we're at the yoke depth that we like, we then split the sleeves and work the body separately. The color work continues on the body, and that's why we have 2 fake seams here at the sides to provide that break, to separate the front from the back. And we work to our desired length and finish with a 2x2 rib. And then we can work on the sleeves. Or work on the sleeves even before you finished body, which is what I did, because that saves you having to turn a whole lot of big project in your lap after every little sleeve round. But the sleeves are similar to the body. Some of the color work still continues, and that depends on which chart you choose to use, the long one or the short one. And again, there is a fake seam here in the middle, so the pattern repeats are not going to meet because it's just too huge. And you have that fake seam here that also acts as the central line for the tapering decreases. And you can make the sleeves are quite long. You can make them shorter or even longer if that's your fashion choice. And finally, we end with adding a neckband. Before you add the neckband, it looks like your sweater is going to be too wide, but remember that there's quite a bit to add. I went with a double or a folded neckband, but quite a popular modification during the test knit was leaving it as a mock turtleneck, just knitting it to double its height here and binding off without joining to the base. So that's a great segue into the customizations. You can modify the length of the sweater, the length of the sleeves, the length of the yoke. You can choose between the various chart options in length, and you can omit introducing the 3rd color, and you can individualize the neckband or the collar. Some of the techniques that I already mentioned. So in this case, there's of course knitting in the round and stranded color work, it goes without saying, but some of the new things might be a ladder back jacquard, and the pattern explains all of those steps that you need to take and includes accompanying videos. And the other interesting technique would be how to join the neckband and attach it to the base on the other side without seaming. It also includes a video for that. But other than that is just knitting with a few purls and some increases and decreases. I think I've covered all of the aspects as much as I could. Of course, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. And if you are a newsletter subscriber, in just a few days, you will get an email about this with your exclusive subscriber discount. If you're not a subscriber yet, there's still a chance to become one. Just click on the link in the description. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.